So once you've done the body of the sock, I've just knit up a few rows here. You can see I have the cuff here, and then I have the stockinette stitch. But once you've actually knit up to the length that you want, we're now going to work on the heel flap. The heel flap is the back part of the sock that sits up against the heel, and you'll notice that the stitches look a little bit different because we want to make that part a little bit sturdier than the rest of the sock. And so let me show you how that's done. Now on the last row of your stockinette stitch, where you're just knitting all the way around, you want to knit needle 1, and you want to knit needle 2, and you want to end on needle 2, because at that point we are going to redistribute the stitches. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the stitches on needle 1 and needle 3 and combine them to just have 16 stitches, or just have the number of stitches. In my case here in this demo, it's going to be 16 stitches. For the pattern, just follow the pattern. It'll tell you how many stitches it needs to have. So we're going to combine that and onto one needle, and then we're going to put the rest of the stitches and break them up into 2 needles. I know it sounds a little complicated, but I'll show you exactly how it's done. So here I have 12 stitches on this needle right now, the second needle. I want to make sure that I only keep 8 stitches on my third needle and my first needle. Okay, so we just want 8 stitches. In the case of your pattern, it's going to be 15 stitches, I believe, on each of those needles, or combining, 15 stitches on each of those needles that you're then going to combine. So right now, because I only want 8 stitches, I'm going to count those 8 from this end, 2, 4, 6, 8, which means I have 2 extra stitches. I'm going to bring those stitches onto this needle. So this second needle, I'm just going to knit with that needle right now and just bring over those 2 stitches. I know it might feel a little awkward, but just bring over those 2 stitches. Okay, so now I have 8 stitches on this third needle. And how do I know this is my third needle? My join is right here. So this was needle 1, 2, this is 3. So I have 8 stitches here. I'm going to add on 8 more stitches, move them over to this needle. So now I'm combining stitches on needles 3 and 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so now I have 16 stitches on this combined needle 1 and 3 needle, and I'm going to take these remaining 2 stitches and I'm just going to transfer them over to this needle. So now you'll notice my work is just on 2 needles, right? This is the back part of the sock. This is the join. We've combined needles 1 and 3 together. So now we do need to split this into 2 needles. So I have 16 stitches here. I'm going to split them into 2 parts. In your pattern, because we've cast on 60 stitches, it's going to be you're going to split it into 15 and 15 stitches, and then on this back needle you're going to have 30 stitches, whereas now I have 16. Okay, so you'll be set up like this at the end of that redistribution, and your yarn should be right here at the end of that original needle 2. And so now this back part with the 16 stitches, in your case it's going to be 30, that's going to be the heel flap. So we're all set to start the heel flap. So to do the heel flap, you're going to slip the first stitch purlwise, which means you're just going to insert. Now we're working with this fourth needle again. Insert as if to purl and just slip it over and then knit 1. So you're just going to take the yarn from here and knit it, and then slip the next stitch and knit 1. And you're just going to do a slip 1, knit 1 for the whole row. Slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 1, and you're going to end up in a slip 1, knit 1 at the end. Knit 1. Okay, then you're going to turn your work. So remember, when you're working on the heel flap, you're just working on the heel flap. You're not going to be doing anything to these stitches. So these stitches will just stay here. Okay. On the flip side, you're going to slip the first stitch, again purlwise, and then just purl all the way through. This time we're just slipping that first stitch and then we're just purling. all the way to the end. And those are the 2 row repeats that you will do for the heel flap. So when you get to the end, turn your work and repeat the same thing. Slip the first stitch. You can hold the yarn towards the back like that. Slip the first stitch and then knit 1, slip, knit 1, slip, knit 1. So you're going to keep doing that for 1 row and then slip the first stitch and purl all the way across for the other row. And when you do that, you work. I have another sample knit up here where you can see I've knit up the flap. I was using the yarn that had different colors in it, which is why you see that the cuff and the body is one color and then the heel flap is a different color. So here you'll see I still have those other stitches, 16 stitches split up on these 2 needles, and I've knit my heel flap. Okay, so at the end of the heel flap, you're going to want to turn the heel. So what that means is till this point it's nice and flat, right? But then you want to make this part curved for the heel, for the base of the heel, right? So that's what's called turning the heel, and we're going to do that right now. So you can knit the heel flap to whatever the pattern tells you to knit, and at one point it's going to tell you to stop, and you're going to, once you've reached the number of rows or the length of the heel flap, then you're going to go to turning the heel. So to turn the heel, we're going to end on a row such that we have to purl, right? So when you get to that point, you're going to have this set up this way where you're ready to purl, and the pattern will tell you exactly how many stitches to knit. So with the first row, you're going to slip the first stitch. You're always going to slip the first stitch while you're turning the heel, and then you're going to purl the number of stitches it tells you to purl. So in this example here, I'm just going to go ahead and purl about 9 stitches. So let's see, 2, 4, 6, 7. Oh, my stitches are a little bit twisted here. 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's going to tell you to purl a certain number of stitches, and then it's going to tell you to turn the work. Okay, and then it'll tell you to slip 1 stitch and knit a certain number of stitches and turn your work. So for this example here, I'm just going to go ahead and knit like 3 stitches. So it tells you to slip 1, knit the number of stitches, and then do a knit 2 together. So I misspoke earlier. You have to do a knit 2 together, which means knit 2 stitches together, and then knit 1, and then turn your work. In the next row, it's going to tell you to slip, the pattern is going to tell you to slip 1 stitch, purl a certain number of stitches, and then purl 2 together, and purl 1, and turn your work. And each time you're doing the same thing, slipping 1, knitting a certain number of stitches, and these stitches, knit stitches, will always be 1 more than what you knit in the previous row, and then knit 2 together. And you can kind of tell where the knit 2 together will fall because you'll see this gap. So you knit 2 together, and then knit 1 and turn. And then the same thing on the other side. You're going to slip the first stitch, you're going to purl the number of stitches, 1 more than what you purled in the previous purl row, and then purl 2 together. And again, I can tell the purl 2 together is right here because of that gap. So I'm going to join those 2 stitches by purling them 2 together, and purl 1, and then turn work. So you're going to keep doing this until all the stitches are consumed. But what I wanted to show you is this part here. You can see how the heel is starting to turn, right, by doing these what we call short rows. And so you'll keep doing that until all the stitches are consumed, and if you follow the pattern, you'll end up on this end here ready to pick up the stitches of the heel flap. And so I'm going to continue doing this, and I'll meet you back up here when we're ready to pick up the heel flap stitch. So now that we've turned the heel, as you can see here, it's nicely turned, and the yarn is at this end. We're ready. So you're facing the right side of the work and you're ready to pick up the stitches. Now the pattern will tell you exactly how many stitches to pick up along the one edge of the heel flap, and then we're going to pick up the same number of stitches on the other edge of the heel flap. So to pick up the stitches, what that means is we're going to actually pick up stitches from this edge, from these V's. You can see these V's that are nicely lined up like that. All along, you're going to pick up those stitches. So follow the pattern, it'll tell you exactly how many stitches to pick up. And before you pick them up, you can check to yourself that you have the right number of stitches. You can sort of pre-plan. And so what I like to do is I like to have an idea from where I'm going to pick up the stitches. So for this demo, I'm going to, let's say, pick up 7 stitches. So you can ignore this first one here that's attached to the needle. Start with this V here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Looks like I have to pick up 8 stitches. So I'm actually going to pick up 8 stitches for this demo. I don't have any hard and fast numbers for this, but the pattern will tell you exactly how many you need to pick up. Now, if you have, let's say the pattern, I can't remember exactly. I have to go back and look at the pattern, but if it tells you to pick up 12 stitches or 16 stitches, and you end up having way too many stitches here, then go back and double check that your heel flap, you've knit it to the right length. But if you've done that, then you should have the right number of stitches. You might be off by 1 or 2 maybe. If that happens, don't panic. You don't have to undo your work. You can just go in here, and if you have too many stitches and you only need to pick up 15 or 16, then you can pick one and you can skip one and pick the next one. Maybe do that a couple times, depending on the number of stitches you need. But in this case, let's say I have to do 8. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I'm going to pick this one up as my 8th. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, to pick up the stitches, the pattern will tell you to use the same needle, the needle that has the heel stitches. We're going to use that same needle. So I'm going to take that needle and insert it into that V, both legs of the V, as you can see, and knit. So there's one. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and skip the second one, and I'm going to pick it up in the third one. Let's do that. Okay, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And for my 8th one, I'm going to pick it up right here. Here's one leg of the V, here's the other leg of the V, and there's my 8th one. Okay. And then I'm going to turn. Now these were those 2 stitches that we split on those 2 needles, the front of the sock. We're now going to actually knit them and combine them onto one needle. So go ahead and knit across the first needle. You're just knitting all the stitches. And then using that same needle, all right, put this needle away, using that same needle, knit across the remaining 8 stitches or whatever stitches you have per the pattern. And now you've combined those stitches back on to this one needle. Okay, and then you're going to now pick up stitches from this end. Again, you have now you're going to use this needle. It's going to be very, very hard to try and pick up stitches with this needle, and we don't want to do that. We're going to use this 4th needle, and we're going to pick up 8 stitches. So again, I can check. Let's see. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to pick up right here through this one and insert it through both legs of the V. 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And now I'm going to transfer a certain number of stitches from this last needle back on here because I want to end up at this center point, okay, the center point of the heel. I want to end up there with the 2 needles having equal number of stitches, okay? So right now, so the pattern will tell you exactly how many stitches to move over. I think in my case, I might need to move over 5 stitches for this demo. Let me see, 3, 4, 5. And when I say move over, I just mean go ahead and knit those stitches on here. And I can check 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 11. So I need to move 1 more. And now I've got the same number of stitches on this needle, same number of stitches on this needle, and I'm going to have the 32 stitches on this needle. So at this point, once you've done this, it's worth doing that check to make sure that your stitches match up to what the pattern is telling you to do. And at this point now, we're ready to work. So just going back to the sock, we've done this heel part, we've turned the heel, and we've picked up stitches along the edges. Now we're going to do this part here, what's called the gusset of the sock. So we're going to knit this part, okay? We're going to sort of bring this stitches so we get this nice little gusset on both sides, all right? So to do that, after you've done this whole rigmarole of picking up the stitches and all of that, just go ahead and do 1 entire row of knit. I'm going to skip that in the interest of time, but you'll just do an entire row of knit. So you'll insert your needle, this 4th needle. So by the way, we're back to that same situation where stitches are on 3 needles. We're going to knit with the 4th needle around. So you're going to go ahead and knit. All right, I'm going to skip that. After you've done that 1 row of knit, then the pattern will tell you to knit the stitches off the 1st needle. We're back to calling this needle 1. And we're gonna knit all the way through to the last 3 stitches, right? And so when you get to the last 3 stitches, then you're going to do a knit 2 together. So you're going to take these 2 stitches and knit them together. And then you're going to knit 1. So we've decreased it. We've decreased the stitch count by 1 stitch. Okay. This part here, for each row, you're just knitting all the way across. So needle 2, just knit all the way across. And then when you get to needle 3, you're going to knit the 1st stitch. Then you're going to do a slip, slip, knit, decrease. And to do that, you're going to slip the 1st stitch knitwise, which means insert as if to knit and just pull it over without doing anything. Do it 1 more time, insert as if to knit, pull it over without doing anything. Then take your left needle, insert it into the front loops of both those stitches that you had just slipped, knit them, and then drop both stitches. Okay. If you need a slower demonstration of the slip, slip, knit stitch and the knit 2 together stitches, I've provided links right here. And that's it. Then you knit all the rest of the stitches on this needle 3. So that was our decrease on both ends of those needles. We decreased it by 1 stitch. So for the gusset, you're going to do 1 row of this decrease, and then the next row is just going to be a knit row all the way around. So it's alternating decrease row, knit row, decrease row, knit row. You're going to keep doing that until you have in the case of my demo, it's going to be 8 stitches, 8 stitches, and 16 stitches. Remember, these 16 won't change. We're not doing any decreases on this needle, right? With your pattern, it's going to be where you'll have 15 stitches, 15 stitches, and 30 stitches on here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I will meet you up in part 3 of this video. So it's a separate video. The link is right at the end of this video, and at that point we'll continue the rest of the sock and finish up the sock. So that will be the last part. See you all there.